experience, you thank you, Annie. When we talk about your lived experience, we're not just talking about people with lived experience with being unhoused or substance use. We're even talking about your lived experience as frontline workers. And I
Yeah.
think really connecting the work that you do and providing examples from what you do is incredibly important.
So you did one last year, Marianne, right?
I did,
Where
yes.
you talked about the impacts of safe injection site closures and how it was adversely affecting drop-in workers, right?
Yes, I did. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when we talk about making sure that when we do a deputation, that we are deputing on something that is relevant to what they're asking for. So this is a municipal um, deputation, which means the city. But so I'm going to put that on hold for a second because I'm going to talk about that a little bit more when we talk about making sure you have the right deputation for the right audience. But yes, I did, and I definitely used my lived experience from working in the sector, and that was really important. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to move forward. Um, Okay, so you have a choice. You could do an in-person or a video. The deputation for 2026 will be January 20th and January 21st. The length, as Helen said, is either 3 to 5 minutes. You absolutely cannot go over. It is worth timing your and making sure that you practice because they will literally cut you off. Typically, they say if depending on how many people, it could be either 3 minutes or 5 minutes. Every time I've deputed, it's always been allowed 5 minutes, but I've always had a 3 minute on backup because the last thing I want to do is be cut off. And you are doing this to the budget committee, which is going to be made up of city councilors. So the first thing you do is you sign up. This is the email to sign up. Um, we have all of your emails, just so you know. And what we will do is typically at the beginning of January, the city sends up something saying, okay, we're ready to accept people to depute, and then you can sign up. So that's probably the best time to sign up. So what we will do is when we get that email from the city, we will send all of you an email so you will be made aware of when the deputation's sign up time is. You want to research the committee, your topic. You want to obviously write your deputation and rehearse and practice and time yourself and then you join the meeting. So this is what I was explaining about what's really important. And I've seen this done in deputations where somebody will depute on something and they'll interrupt them and be like, you know what? That's not us. So for example, for the city, I've seen people depute on like hospitals and they'll be like, the hospital is provincial. That's not something that we do. And they'll kind of cut them off. So as Helen mentioned, last year I deputed. It was right around the time that they were going to cut the safe consumption sites, and and essentially that is what they did do. Um, However, I wasn't deputing on the safe consumption sites because the safe consumption sites are funded by the province. What I did depute on was how this was going to affect the drop-ins. And if you look on the list that we have here, drop-ins and shelters are covered by the municipal budget. And what I really wanted to do was increase funding for drop-ins because we know, and we were right, that they were going to have to respond to a lot more overdoses and that they were going to be in positions to do a lot more resourcing for people. So it is really, really important to make sure that you are on topic because you don't want to get cut off. But like I said, some of the things that have impacted our sector, Bill 10, Bill 60, all these bills are provincial. However, what you can talk about is the impact on you and your program. What's not included is, and these are different sectors. As well, we will be sending out these slides, so if you miss something, you will be able to get that. Okay.
Okay, I
Helen.
can talk about this. So research, it's really important that you look into the counselors. For example, if you find out that your counselor is part of the budget committee, that's even more important that when you're doing your deputation, you let them know what your ward is and you can let your counselor know in advance. You can also follow up and request a meeting. It depends how much work you want to do. And I think it's about six, sometimes we'll only have three committee members present. So because they have deputations across the city, they sometimes will spread people out who are part of the committee. So it's good to let your counselor know beforehand and ask them to follow up with you. So research your topic extensively as you can and choose some facts or stats that are relevant. And as we've mentioned, it's good to use your lived experience because that's what will capture their attention. Typically, I'll see counselors on their phones and on their tablets. And then as soon as they feel like there's something that's more lived experience, they tend to look up and notice.
So here's some tips that we have for you. As Helen just mentioned, make it personal. I know we talk, like I said, we talk about lived experience as people who have lived, as the people that we are serving, but also remember that you do have lived experience and your personal vision is extremely important. And how you experience things through your work is extremely important, whether it's burnout, whether it's difficulty with your job, based on a lot of it's all based on funding, right? Like obviously I think we know that like we would have a lot easier time doing our jobs if we had more funding and more resources. So if you could explain that and give some personal examples, that would be really helpful. Talk about why this issue matters to you, why it's important, how does it affect your life, how it affects other people. Use some evidence. If you can find some stats, add that in, of course. If you want to connect with other activism and community organizing on this issue to get as much information, be clear about what you're asking. Always be polite, always be professional. I have seen people do these deputations, and we don't want to alienate our audience. We want them to listen to us, and people tend to get shut down when they're extremely aggressive. When it comes to writing my deputation, just a tip that I can give you personally is I'm not a great last minute person. I'm not the person who's going to stand up or stay up the night before and start being like, okay, what do I want to write? I think about this months in advance, and I have a little Word document that has my deputation. And I just, if I see something in the newspaper, if I have conversations with people that sort of make me think about something, I'm always adding it to this work document, this Word document. But I really take, for me, it's doing research months in advance, to be able to, when I do come to sit and write it, that I have all this information. If I see a statistic that I think is going to be really relevant, I'll just mark it down. So for me, that works really well. I know some people work very differently and, they are superstars when it comes to the night before doing things. But I really like the idea of being able to do it really slowly and mindfully and be able to have all that information when I do sit down to writing it. And honestly, I don't write it all in one day. I'll write it, then I'll come back to it, and maybe spend a little bit of time the next day, and really spend the week heading up to it to prepare for that.
I think we should ask folks if anyone here has done a deputation at some point and what that experience was like. So,
So we will, and we're gonna save it till once
the
I,
end, yeah.
yeah, so that
Okay.
we're gonna come back and ask you, because like I said, we want to get through the slides, but then we want to hear from you as well. We want to have more of a conversation.
So I'm going to be sharing the hamburger method and, just as a note, your hamburger can be either meat or tofu or, you know, chickpeas, whatever you like to put in that bun is good. But we're not focusing on food today. So I got this from Progress Toronto, and I think it's really useful. So the top one is your introduction, where you say who you are, what you're talking about, who you're with, and what you would like the committee to do. Like have a really clear ask. And inside is the burger and the toppings. So, how does your lived experience and the people you work with fit into the issue? How will the budget affect you all? What are some stats or facts to strengthen the deputation and make it more compelling for them to hear? And as we mentioned, how does this affect your job and the people you work with? So the bottom bun should be really clear. And what do you want the committee to do? What do you want to leave those members with and remind the committee why you're there?
You want to rehearse. And as I said, one that you can present in 5 minutes, one that you can present in 3 minutes. Every time I've done it, I think I've done it 3 years in a row. It's always been 5 minutes. Um, Recognize that when you're there, you're going to be nervous. And you really, really want to make sure that they don't cut you off because often people leave something that's really important at the end and they don't get a chance to say it. We also want to let you know that, like, this is a really difficult process and it's really tough talking in front of people and plus you're being videotaped and recorded. You can have someone come and sit with you. You can accompany somebody. You could have someone sit behind you. One of the things that we did, I run the advocacy committee for Toronto Drop-In Network. And one of the things that we did and we will do again is we'll do it together. So we'll be like, okay, I'm going to depute on this day at this time. I'm going to try to sign up for this time. You don't get to choose what time, to be perfectly honest. You get to do it either in the morning or in the afternoon. But we all chose to do it at the same time and we all sat and stayed. And we were very lucky we had the capacity to take off time to support each other. And it's so much better when you have your crew. It really makes a difference.
I just wanted to mention that they will release the list of speakers on the morning of. I believe it's at 8:30 a.m. So I always make a point of checking that list first thing in the morning. Because not everybody can handle or can take time off work or whatever to be there first thing in the morning. And there's usually preamble from the counselors. Yeah. So do you want me to do this next part?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So if you're deputing online, I'll be honest, it's less exciting. The counselors hopefully will be listening, but I think the priority is just try to make it in person. But if you can't, and if you're too scared to do it in person, I totally get it. You might want to do it like your first time online. And usually you have to go through this WebEx platform, which seems almost unusual, but I think you should be arriving early. So in case you have to download WebEx onto your computer, some people manage to get in by phone, but I have yet to see how that works. So you'll see the clock that shows up and then it'll be counting down actually. I think it counts down from 5 to 0. And there'll be a speakers list, as I mentioned, on the day of, and it will show the order. Things can change though. Sometimes people won't show up and then you'll get moved. Suddenly you'll be moved up. And or it could take longer than it's supposed to take. And they'll take a long lunch break often. So it's a really dynamic process. And if possible, try to have some flexibility around when you're going to depute. But we can try to help folks as well. I mean, I'm happy to do that around time. Okay, so B, you wrote about the platform. That's great.
Okay, so the next one is you could either do it through the WebEx, or you can do it in person. If you are coming in person, show up early. It is very fluid the way it's done, and I would say most of the times I've done it, it's taken longer than when I thought I was going to do it. But, if it's a snowstorm, it's January, if it's cold, people don't show up, or who knows why people don't show up. But all of a sudden, you could think there's 10 more people to go, and it's actually like you're up after like maybe one or two other people. So definitely show up early. You are going to be going to City Hall. You will have to go through security on the main floor. Therefore, remember you are going through a metal detector. So you want to make sure that you don't have a lot of stuff in your backpack or purse. And then ask for instructions, obviously, where to go and where the deputations are. For me, I always just like to come early and make sure I know where I'm going and being able to. I also kind of, if you do have the time, it is quite amusing to watch and listen and see what other people are doing as well. Whoops, sorry. We're going to show you an example of a deputation right now. This was done from somebody from the neighborhood group, named Robert. Um, his deputation was done after I don't know if any of you remember, about 3.5 years ago, in all the drop-ins, there was funding and there were employment workers as well as housing workers. Those jobs got cut in July 3 years ago. And so he's deputing about his experience, and he talks about his personal experience as well as having to deal with the funding cuts. So I'm gonna let you listen to it and then we can chat. Like I said, I promise you we're gonna have lots of time to chat about everything afterwards.
Okay, go ahead, Robert.
My name is Robert, and I'm here as a representative of the Member Advocacy Committee of St. Stephen's Drop-In Center in Kensington Market. I would like to share with you part of my lived experience in Toronto in the last few years, and I hope you take into consideration how this budget could affect people with similar stories to mine. I have a diagnosed mood disorder, and I'm an alcoholic in recovery. I've owned a house, I have been homeless, but I currently live in stable housing. I've owned a business. I've had bouts of unemployment due to my mental health and addiction, and I currently have full-time employment at a treatment center. I owe a lot of this to the neighborhood group Community Services. It is there where I gained vital experience in the community as a peer support worker. An employment worker at the neighborhood group helped me build my confidence, bulked up my experience, and helped build my resume. This led me to getting my dream job that I'm currently employed at. The housing worker at TNG helped me find stable housing, going from unhoused, sleeping on benches, sleeping on friends' couches, in long stays at CAMH, to aiding me to finding an apartment, from being unhoused to being housed. However, in the last few years, due to previous council budget cuts, TNG lost all their employment workers and housing workers. Who does that? Who cuts housing workers for the unhoused? Who cuts employment workers for those that are living in poverty, those that are unemployed? Some of our members are housed, but they often have landlords that aren't abiding by the landlord-tenant laws of Ontario. Housing workers provide vital support, informing our members of their rights and referring them to other agencies and paralegal teams that can help. Who cuts employment workers to those living in poverty, the unemployed? Employment workers can help guide and direct people's skills into employment. How have these cuts benefited our community? How have they benefited our society in general? I'm really grateful for these workers. They were there for me when I needed help getting through the obstacles of mental health and addiction. I don't know where I'd be without them. I can see a direct relation between these workers' involvements with me and how my life got substantially more manageable. It's not unfortunate that people in similar situations have been given these opportunities. It's tragic. My grandfather used to say, give a man a fish and he can eat for a day. Give a man a rod and he won't go hungry. These workers were my rod. When you make budget decisions, I hope you realize that cuts to services that may seem insignificant can make a world of difference to people in our community. They made a difference in my life. So please take into consideration those who are vulnerable and hurting over those who are hoarding wealth and living in abundance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for the deputy?
Um, okay, I have to say that I really love this deputation. It's a real great combination of providing facts, providing opinion, and providing lived experience, and how those cuts affect someone on a personal level. So I very much appreciate Robert's deputation, and also want to point out that like we don't have to we don't have to worry about being nervous and about being anxious. People are very patient. That is something that, none of us are professional speakers. And it really is meant to be the community that comes out and talks the way they're able to talk. And like I said, Robert has done an amazing job. And I think this is such an incredibly impactful deputation.
Can I just add that with Robert, it took him a number of months or even years before he wanted to do a deputation. He was in the member advocacy committee, and I think it's just like deciding that it's okay to do it. And, he was able to look at his phone, which I think helps. For me, I always like to have my material typed up in front of me. I could never, as Marianne said, just wing it. So some people do, and that's okay. But for Robert, I think it was helpful that he had his phone and, he could talk to some of us beforehand about what he wanted to do. But that was basically all his work. So it was great.
The other thing I do want to mention, and I think it's really important. I know a lot of people here are from TNG, but also from other organizations. We really also want to make sure if you are going and representing your organization, it is really important to show your manager. You want to make sure that what you're deputing on as a representative of an organization aligns with the values of the organization. So no matter who you are, it's always really important to get a second opinion, and especially for a lot of us who do frontline work, to show our managers what we will be deputing on as well. We have a list of sources. Oh, the other thing I actually wanted to, Helen talked about something that I think is really important. Not everybody is able to do it right away. Like I said, this is a very frightening way to to advocate. So it's not for everybody. And it was interesting. And I know, Kin, you're on this call. I saw you. Kin's from our advocacy committee, and Kin wanted to have some participants do a deputation last year. And when asking them, they're like, no, I can't do it. I don't want to do it. And that's fair. So what Kin did is like she went back to them and said like, "Hey, I am deputing. Why don't you say what you want to say?" And a lot of Kin's deputation was taking quotes from the members and saying like, some of our members weren't comfortable doing this in person, but here's some things that they wanted to say. And I thought that also had a lot of really great impact as well. So we also want to let you know that we're going to come off the screen in a few minutes, and answer your questions. But the one thing I want you to know is they might have questions for you. And that can be very easy, just answering their questions. Some of their questions, I will admit that because I have sat in on some of them, have not been very kind, have been a little accusatory, have been, I don't know, I felt like a little aggressive.
Even from the progressive, like lefty counselors, they can ask you really complicated questions. You're like, I don't know.
So I want you to know that it's okay to say, I don't know. I want you to know that it's okay to say, I can get back to you. I want you to know that it's okay to say, I wasn't prepared for this question, but I'm happy to report back or send you an email. I did see one person, it was actually the person before me, the first time I deputed, and they actually were awful. They were not nice to her. I think I forgot what she was deputing on. I think it was bike lanes. And one of the counselors said, like, where do you think this money's going to come from? Like, tell me where you want this money to come from. And I was really impressed with this woman who said, I don't know where the money is going to come from. She was a college professor. She's like, I teach at a college, so that's actually not my job. I don't do budgets, and I feel that that is part of what you're supposed to do. And she said it again. This is where it's kind of easy to be a little aggressive if you're getting the aggression to be like, how am I supposed to know? You tell me. You're the one who's supposed to be working in this field. She didn't do it that way. She did it in a very professional way, but it went right back at them, and she wasn't prepared to answer that question. And it wasn't a fair question to her. And she very politely said, like, that's not my job, and this is what my job is, and this is why it's important to me, but that's your job. And she did it in a way that wasn't matching their aggression. And it looked really good on her and looked not so great on them. So I'm going to stop sharing um, and really open this up now for questions and for comments. And I know B, you've been monitoring the chat, so perhaps
Yeah. Um,
some of the
we
questions.
have, yeah, we have a good question about what the committee is valuing most. Like, are they valuing personal story? Are they valuing data? Are they valuing a clear ask? Or sort of an amalgamation of that? So maybe you guys could discuss that.
Absolutely. And I'm going to let Helen also answer as well. They don't tell us what they're valuing, what's a big value for them. The ones that I've seen that I felt were really impactful are ones that had everything, that really had a little bit of some statistics, some lived experience, just pretty much like what Robert had, where he had a little bit of everything and really took a situation, a very specific situation, which was the defunding of the employment and the housing workers, and took that information and talked about the impact of him as somebody with some lived experience.
I would agree, Marianne. I think sometimes your deputation will be more heavily towards lived experience and some will be more factual. Like I've heard somebody like Sean Maher, who's been an executive director here and there, do a lot of facts and figures. And because of who he is, he's like he has a lot of status. So he can really do that kind of deputation. But not all of us have that kind of what I would call social capital. Um, so we would maybe do something more balanced, or if it is somebody with who comes from a really like a place of they've been homeless and they're on ODSP or something, that person might weigh their deputation more heavily towards lived experience. Those deputations can be super impactful and they can also be picked up by the media. All of your deputations can be picked up by the media, but sometimes places like the Toronto Star and CBC are looking for something very emotive. So I would just say that, you know, all deputations are useful.
I also want to say something that you said, Helen, and I've seen this as well, is first of all, I would do what your comfort level is, where you feel comfort. And I have seen it where a lot of executive directors have come and had a lot of information based. So it is really good to see both. But I have seen the press who do sit in on the in-person ones go up to somebody and ask to interview them after their deputation. And again, you have to decide whether you're okay with that. But I would also, before I even go to the deputation, ask my manager to see if we are allowed to do that. Because not everybody, again, if you are representing your organization, you are not necessarily allowed to talk to the media, and it could be depending on all sorts of things. So before I even go to my deputation, I would be speaking to my manager and saying, hey, if they do connect with me, could I speak to the media? And what are the guidelines around that? Because the media can be great way of getting our word across, but they could also be very manipulative in what they what they report and how they report it.
Yeah, we have a couple more questions in the chat here. Um, we have a question, is it a choice whether you do Zoom or in person? Another question that sort of like relates to that online platform is if they have the ability to utilize an online platform, do they also have the ability to prepare a slide presentation or play photos or videos on the screen while you're presenting your deputation? Um, and then just to follow up on if it's better to focus on one clear issue or briefly mention several related needs.
Okay, lots of questions. The answer is it is your choice whether you do it in person or whether you do it. It's not by Zoom, but it's online on online WebEx. So that's your choice. And here's me not remembering the rest of the question.
No, no worries. I put three questions together, so it makes sense that you couldn't remember them. We'll walk it through together. The second question was more about if you are doing online, is it possible to present like slides, put together a presentation?
Yeah, I believe it is.
Yeah.
I have, and yeah, I would say I've seen it done and it is. But be prepared. When I was there last time, someone had a slide deck and they only had limited time to try to make it work and it didn't, they were struggling with the technology and they did not work out. So be prepared. Yes. So the answer is yes. But if they can't get it to work within like a few minutes, they're probably going to be like, we can't get it to work. You can send it to us later.
I think too, it's important to mention that you can also make like written submissions. So if you're like, ooh, I don't want to risk this presentation, you do have the opportunity to also like email in information as well. And that can reach the committee members. Um, yeah, I see another question here on do you think it's more impactful online or the same as in person? And I know I can speak a little bit about doing deputations online. Both like as a student and as a worker. Um, Sometimes being able to do it online, although it might not seem as impactful as being there in person with sort of the like hustle and bustle of like coming together and the sort of community organizing aspects of it, it also presents the reality of where you are. Um, I think last year at the budget committee, when I did my deputation, I was on campus in the school library. And that's just the reality of where I was. I was speaking about lived experience, about being unhoused and being a student and what that looks like and what that feels like. And they were able to see my reality. I know Brian also did a deputation from work. And he's like, hey, I'm at Weston King. I can't leave. Like this is the reality of our work. So I think it can be really impactful um, in different ways. And it's also about meeting you where you're at, right? Like if being online is how you're able to do it, then do what's best for you. But I'll pass it back to Marianne and Helen.
Sure. And Helen, you mentioned, and maybe I'll let you take that. For me, I prefer it in person.
Mm.
I do definitely feel like it's more of a connection when I'm able to in person. I really like how that you explained that it is important to show the realities, and it was important for I found yours very impactful, seeing like there was people in the library and there was people going behind you, and knowing that this was a really important thing, but you didn't have the capacity to do that in person for all the reasons that you were talking about is something that we're showing them, not just telling them.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think for me last year, I was dealing with long COVID and I did not want to be there in person and get another infection. And if you have, if you're disabled, if you have health issues, sometimes it's like, well, it's easier to do stuff from home, right? And I think we learned through the pandemic that that has to be an accommodation for folks. And as B's saying, it's not just people who are disabled, it's like people who have kids or people who have school or a job or all kinds of things. And they need to understand that lived experience because, yeah, in some ways it is a privilege to be able to go in person to City Hall. And like for me, I get paid to do it, but sometimes I depute on things like policing, which is not something I can do from my job typically. So, I think we need to just let people know that if you are speaking as a staff person, I would suggest you do need to clear that with your manager, which you probably already said, Marianne, depending on what you're going to be saying.
The other thing I also want to point out too is, the counselors here, I don't know, like just in a day, I think they probably do like, I don't know if there's like 60 deputations that they hear. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I watch them and they're on their phones, they're totally preoccupied. And it can be very difficult when you're incredibly nervous and doing all this hard work and all this prep to see somebody that's on their phone. And my only advice for that is remember that it's not just them that you're presenting to, that it is recorded, that people do take recordings. You too could take the recording and put it out on like your work. If you I for TDIN, we have a we put it up on our on the web, we put it up on our social media, you can put it up on your LinkedIn. So I think just that it's not just those people that may not be particularly or may not seem particularly engaged, and maybe they are, but it is a lot, I think, to listen to all these deputations. It is pretty rude to have their phones out, and to be doing this with their phones on, and very intimidating when like I said, when you put all this work into it. But remember that it is more like a presentation and even a performance where you have the ability to do this and to do it to the best of your ability, and you can take that clip and get it afterwards and post it anywhere you want. So it's not like, oh, well, nobody heard me. It didn't make any difference. It does. It makes a big difference.
I just want to mention that last year we had 14 deputations from the wider TNG TDIN. I think it was TNG. And we do have everything on our website, and I can try to find that link to share with people. It was a banner year. Part of it was because of this training, I'm sure. And we had staff, we had participants, and we had students and volunteers. So it was fabulous.
Peter, I think I
Yeah,
saw
I
your
was going
hand
to
up.
say Peter had his hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to pick up on what you just said, Marianne, because I was going to make the point. I've done tons of these deputations over the years, and I do them because I really like doing them. I find them exciting, and I'm not nervous about it in anything. To me, it's the most powerful way democracy gives you a chance to speak truth to power, and these people are really the power. But what can be really challenging about it is you put all the time into it and you practice and then, like you say, they don't really look like they're listening. And frankly, the people sitting around you, I was in person all the time, I think, they don't seem like they're listening either, because this is the 20th deputation they've sat through and you've sat through. And you kind of finish it up and you feel a little deflated sometimes. So I just want to caution people, like it's still exciting and you do feel great, I did my bit. And you can parlay it and use it over again and send it to the papers and so on. But it can be kind of a letdown experience too. It's not going to change the world. And yet you almost wish they'd ask you a nasty question because at least you've got to them, right? And you get to have a witty repartee and say, that's your job. So that's the thing. The other point I want to make is just a caution about the media thing. I was making deputations years ago with city council, and there was some issue that was happening, and the media were all over it. And they were looking for the deputants who were clearly identified as social service workers from agencies and coming up to people and challenging them and basically saying, you're really just here to protect your job, aren't you? And get the city to give you more money. And you had to dodge it. You basically had to not talk to the media. That is the best strategy when dealing with the media. And I think TNG would endorse this. Our policy, in fact, is don't ever talk to the media alone. Always talk to the media with somebody else, presumably a manager or something. And that's one answer you can give them. Say, I'm sorry, I'm not, I'm TNG doesn't have staff talk to the media. You can talk to TNG. Here's the phone number, you know. So that's maybe the easiest way to respond if you do find yourself in that bind. It happens in person. I don't suppose it happens online, but they could reach out to you, I suppose. They got your name and number. So do be cautious about that. It was a real challenging moment. They were after dozens and dozens of us who were clearly from different agencies on a particular issue. It was a concerted media attempt. But it's great. It's a lot of fun. I want to put it that way. And, you know, I don't want to overemphasize or underestimate that it can be difficult and it's challenging. And, you know, you got to get it right or you can really, you know, you're not going to do any harm, but you can waste the opportunity, I suppose. But I think it's a brilliant opportunity. I think you'll have fun with it. And I think you'll feel empowered by it. Even if you do feel a little at the end, like, is that it? Okay, guess I go home now. But it makes a difference. You're going to see it turn up in the vote then. So thanks for this opportunity. Enough said.
Thank you, Peter, and thanks for bringing to the attention that it's fun and that it is empowering and it feels amazing, and you get that sort of endorphin release afterwards because it does feel really good to do that and really feel like you're working towards making a difference, which is incredibly important. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Um,
we have a few more
question.
questions,
Sure.
Marianne. One of them is some folks are wondering if there's any way they can go to watch deputations, which we touched on a little bit, just so that they can sort of see what it's like. I did add the YouTube channel for the city, so you can see a variety of different types of deputations that way. And I think Helen also added in a link. So we'll make sure that folks who are attending today or folks who signed up today, that when we email everybody out, that you have a place to go to watch some deputations and sort of get a feel for it.
And you can go in person and just watch. You don't have to go
Yeah,
to present. So you're allowed to, they don't ask if you're presenting when you walk in. So you could just go there and stay for an hour, half hour, however, if you're just interested in watching, or if you're interested in supporting a coworker or a participant, you can definitely be there as well.
yeah. Okay, some more questions. Is it more impactful to depute as an individual, a community member, or as part of an organization like Regent Park Safety Network? And I think Regent Park Safety Network recently did some deputation training.
I think all of it. I would say yes. Yes, yes, and
Yes,
yes.
yes, yes.
I think it's also really important when you are listening to 60 deputations or 50 or however they listen to that it is changed up. It's very difficult to listen to the same kind over and over and over again. So I think we need to show up in any way that we can, and in the way that we feel the most confident. And so absolutely yes to all of them.
Yeah, some of my favorite deputations have been from high school students, deputing about public transit. Really, really powerful stuff. Okay, let's see. For first time deputants, will there be any training or rehearsal sessions to help us practice beforehand?
So we don't have anything scheduled. This is our training. However, both, and I'm talking for Helen because Helen and I spoke ahead of time. And B, maybe if you don't mind putting both mine and Helen, if that's okay, your email in the chat, we are happy to help you out. And if you want to practice with us, if you want to give one of us a call, one of the things that I want to do for obviously the time that before the holidays, and before the deputations is not fill up my schedule with too much of training, is to be able to be available for anybody who wants to talk about what they're doing or do a practice. So there's no formal training, but both Helen and I are available to help out any way we can. We think this is important.
Excellent.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can do
yeah,
Zoom or phone. I'm not going to commit to in person, but you never know.
awesome. And I see Megan's put here, just as a comment, that counselors were caught playing Tetris on their phone the last time that Megan did a deputation. I remember when that happened. And I was so mad because that counselor specifically is supposed to be one of like our progressive champions. So I think that sort of thing really speaks to the importance of holding our decision makers accountable, right? Like you're here to work for us. And in sharing your story, and sharing what it's like to be someone who lives in Toronto and work in Toronto and play in Toronto and learn in Toronto. That it's really important that they're hearing all aspects of that and that we're calling out even people that we consider progressive, like champions. When they're not doing their job, we call them out too. Yeah, that's part of it.
With the idea of doing it in a professional way and remembering that we want them to be our allies. And we don't want to make enemies for that. Yeah, I mean, that's just incredibly rude. That's all I can say is, I'm sorry for that experience. And we can't control other people, but we can control our response to other people. And yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
pointing that out.
And then I also just see another comment. Always remember your deputation is record and now in the public domain. And I know that that's something that we've talked about a lot for like program participants and community members that um, sharing your name publicly, sharing your experience publicly can feel unsafe in a lot of different ways. And that if there are folks that we're working with who do want to be participating, but it might not be the best way for them to do it from making themselves visible, and that there's other ways that we can do that, right? Like we can share other folks' stories and experiences and create ways to keep people safe while still being able to participate and have autonomy over their rights. Yeah, I see Jason,
I
you have
just
your hand
also
up.
want to, just before we go to Jason, I just also want to say that as a response, like it's kind of our responsibility as frontline workers, if we are working with participants who want to depute, is making them very much aware that it is on public record. And, should they decide to share their information, just letting them know that it is public record, it doesn't go away, it will be on YouTube as well. Yeah. Yes, Jason.
Hi everyone. I just wanted to speak to that as well. I've done a lot of stuff this last year advocating and being on the news and different YouTube clips and etc. And I just wanted to remind everybody that this isn't just public record you need to worry about. Be careful how much of your own personal information you do share as well. I've shared a lot on my past with criminality and transitioning forward into housing and, a lot of positive things. But some of the things that have come out of that have, caught me off guard that I wasn't really prepared for either. CBC News, when they put their one article together on me, they opened it up with the tag phrase of every time Jason Miles came out of jail, he was bigger, meaner, and stronger. And that was how they led off the article, even though I talked about all this positive movement and where life is now. So, keep in mind how things can be phrased. And like another thing that caught me off guard was somebody that I don't know, somebody I've never talked to, that's a total stranger to me, who's currently in jail. Happened to see one of the things that I was doing online in the news, and sent me a letter from jail asking for my help. So that was very flattering, but at the same time, it was kind of like, holy crap, this person knows where I live, and I don't know who they are. So just bear in mind how much of your personal information you are sharing while you're speaking about your lived experience, because you might find a nice surprise in your mailbox when you get home. That's it, guys.
That's great. Really good advice, Jason. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, I think it's really, really important to recognize that, like I said, anybody can find it. It doesn't go away. It stays on, on YouTube or out in the web or wherever, and perhaps for employment reasons or for your privacy reasons, as you mentioned, Jason. That, we have to be really careful about what we divulge and what we're comfortable divulging. So yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. I saw somebody's hand go up and then I missed it.
Yeah, I was going to say I saw someone's hand go up and then disappear.
No, I think it's me by mistake. I was
Oh,
clapping
yes,
with
yes,
Jason.
yes.
That's all. I was clapping with Jason, so I used
No,
the
no
wrong
worries.
one. Thank
No
you.
worries. We love it. We love a round of applause.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I think we're
And,
mostly caught up in the chat. So if anyone else wanted to open their mic and ask a question or raise their hand, yeah.
and Helen, I think you had a question that you were asking to the group during the presentation. I said like, maybe we could talk about it now.
Oh, well, I think a little bit of it's been covered. Just does anyone want to share, anyone else want to share their experiences with making a deputation?
And that's okay. And also, like I said, I just want to reiterate that, we obviously think this is really, really important. So much to the point that we want to make ourselves as available as we can to everybody here and everybody in our community, that we can assist, we can accompany. I'm obviously planning on spending some time on those days to be at in person. So yeah, we definitely want to be as available as we can to help you out.
I,
Um,
I just wanted to respond. Can the deputation be on any topic? I think that Marianne, you mentioned earlier on that certain things are city responsibilities and certain things are provincial and federal. I mean, when we share the slides, we might want to give a list of what the city services are, which I do have some slides around that. Basically, the city stuff is stuff that you use every day. Often people want to make a deputation about healthcare. Healthcare is typically provincial unless it's public health, or unless like harm reduction can also be a city responsibility. Um, but it's, yeah, housing is also city, but it's other levels as well. And sometimes what you'll hear when they respond is, well, we've been trying to get the provincial government to pick up the tab on this. And so that can be a really frustrating response because you want the city to take action and to be accountable. So, you can just remind them, I'm here today to speak to you and I'm asking you to do something. Because there is a lot of buck passing, I find.
Absolutely. And in the slide deck, which we will release to you, we had two slides, one that is municipal and a lot of the things that fall under the municipal guidelines, as well as what's provincial and what's federal. Jason, I think is that new hand up?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Hi again, everyone. I think if anybody is interested in doing a deputation and they want to look at the city list of like, what the city is responsible for versus what province is responsible for, take careful note. I know we all want more housing, and a lot of us think that because City of Toronto is gets a lot of recognition for doing housing. The way the city Toronto housing works is very different than what we actually think they do. Most of the housing creation that's done through the city isn't done by them directly developing. It's done by them giving concessions on construction costs to buildings and to developers that they'll waive construction costs if they make a certain component of their building rent geared to income or supportive housing or whatever like that. So even though that's technically city housing, that hasn't actually been, it's not like the city took out a $300 million contract and built a house or built an apartment complex for everyone to live in. That's not how city housing works. So just bear in mind, there are nuances to each of those things that might fall under city, but they might not actually do what we think we do under those realms.
Thank you, Jason. And that is really important. And also, back to what Helen was saying is a lot of times, even if it does fall under city, some of it is all three levels of government. And a lot of times they'll really be like, well, we didn't get the money from the federal government. We didn't get the money because it is a combination of those levels of government, but being really kind in saying that this is what we want you to hear from us, instead of just letting them blame, because I find a lot of what's been going on with the three levels of government is there's been a lot of finger pointing and trying to shift responsibilities. So yeah, but really good points, Jason. Thank you. Victoria, I see you have a hand up.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Good morning. My name is Sidonia, and I've been with the Anglican Church for the last 15 years or so. I have a question. So we are here downtown around so many shelters. Um, so warming centers, drop-in centers. So um, the situation is the way it is. We obviously have to think of security, right? Nevertheless, when a person with a dog or with a cat or a homeless or someone who needs an extra cup of coffee or breakfast passes by the shelter, could we please allow the hungry person to have a cup of coffee or a breakfast because it's breakfast time or lunch time or dinner time, other than saying, please stop. Please don't go inside. Please, we don't like you. Could we allow a hungry person who is not sleeping in the shelter to have a cup of coffee or to have something to eat? Is that because diet is important for everybody and the neighborhood marks my diet and your diet? And if we know that there are churches and synagogues or mosques around, we know that the food is clean and the food um, is prepared according to religious standards, right? It could be halal, it could be kosher, it could be vegetarian. That's important. So could we answer the question from the perspective of a homeless or hungry? Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. And I can definitely let Helen answer this as well. I think so I'm assuming this is something that you would like to depute on, or that you're not asking, because I think someone wrote in that there are some shelters that do that. I know drop-ins will provide food and meals for anybody, including takeout. So if someone can't enter the space for whatever reasons, most of them will provide takeout food for people who are hungry. Toronto Drop-In Network has a meal list on our website that, oh, look at that, Bee's right ahead of me, that talks about all the different meals that are being offered and all the times that are being offered, including holidays. We update that for the holidays because they change. But I think this is an example, if this is what you're asking, Victoria, but yes, I think it is an example of, maybe that's something you want to explore with being able to have more of an outreach when it comes to shelter food and warming center food. Helen, did I miss anything?
No, you have the knowledge about the drop-in sector network, it's good.
Yeah,
Um,
one more detail, if I may. Um, Sometimes people's budget allows the kosher meals. You need extra budget for that, or halal or vegetarian. Everybody knows that, right? It's important for lots of people. If I'm in the neighborhood and I'm Muslim, or I'm in the neighborhood, I'm passing through and I'm Jewish. I'm in the neighborhood. I'm a vegetarian. It's an example. I don't touch meat, whatever the reason. It's important. Please allow me. Please. It's government. I'm around the city hall where I feel a citizen. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's important. The little extra. It's so important. Allow me to stand up and be a good Jew and keep kosher, or a good Muslim and eat halal, or be a good vegetarian, stick to my vegetarian diet. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And I think you have a very good point that people do have the human right to have agency over how they choose their diet and what they choose to eat. So thank you.
I just wanted to add, Marianne, that something we learned and around a campaign to preserve the special diet a number of years ago was how many people struggle who have a health condition to get their dietary special, I don't call them special, dietary access needs met at drop-ins and food banks. So I think that's something where, in an ideal world, we could do more advocacy around. I mean, I'm one of those people. I have a very limited diet. I would find it really hard to eat in those settings. So I just think we need to acknowledge it, that what we heard was that people are going to get food, but it doesn't always work for them.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Are there any other questions or any other comments?
I think we're all caught up in the chat. I had dropped in a link to the TDIN meal list, and then Megan had asked about the holiday list, and I believe we're going to be getting that out this week because our student finalized everything for us. Yay, Danielle.
I just want to mention that sometimes I email the budget committee like in late December. I'm a keener. Personally, I'd rather be up first or second or third than to be number 93. So it just depends how eager you are to get your name on the list.
Yeah. I too. I find it really nerve-wracking watching other people's, and I'm a lot more relaxed after. But I think some people actually like to look at some other people before they go. So I think we're all very different. But as I said, for any of you who missed, we have everybody's email. Once that email comes out from the city asking for deputations, we will send that to you as well, so that you can, so you don't have to look for it, because you could miss it and then you don't want to miss your opportunity. All right. Is there anything that we missed? Anything else? Otherwise, we will say goodbye. But again, like, we're around and we're here and we want to help you. And we really, really want our voices to be heard. We hear from so many other people and they're loud and they're strong, but so are we. And this is a way of making our voices heard and to really educate the general public about some of the things that are going on. So thank you so much for showing up. This was a great crowd and really great attendance. So that's gives all of us a lot of hope. And thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. It was great to see you all.
Thank you so much.